Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA. I'm Nick, and today we are wrapping up our series on the Big Leap with part 4 called Living in Einstein Time.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set. Cool title, huh?
Yes, I went Einstein Time.
Einstein Time.
I went to Ben Time.
He in this section, just as kind of an aside, it's interesting how he writes it. It's very much got a sales letter kind of feel to it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it kind of like is tracking you forward. It's real good copy. But the concept itself I felt like was really important. I mean, we could go on and on with this book. There's so much good stuff in it, but I felt like this was one piece that was really important to pull out. Just because all of us are dealing with time in some way.
Time is so precious. And when I hear, when we talk a lot about the not enoughness and the lack energy, which can show up through money, it shows up through time.
Such a big way.
I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And even in my own head, that's what I'd be like, how am I going to get this done? When am I going to do this? And you got to take a breath and be like, wait, I'm going to bend time.
Yeah, you kind of have to decide, right? It. And he gives some really good instructions for how to do that in this. The breathing is a great tool for that, but he gives some more instructive kind of exercises in order to help.
Well, let's hear it. Let's go. Let's spend time.
It's a little elusive. I want to set it up though. It's kind of an elusive chapter.
I remember that when I read it.
It's like you kind of get it, but it's something that I just want to kind of warn everybody right up front. It's something that you really do need to kind of practice and play with and sort of find your way with.
And by the way, this is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
I started following him on Instagram. He has an amazing orange cat.
Oh, he has an amazing one. And this is part 4 in the series.
That's right.
So there are others if you've not yet listened.
And go back to the beginning if you haven't. He highlights right out of the box. For your life to work harmoniously, you need to develop a harmonious relationship with time. Most people have a difficult time balancing all of their priorities. Balancing, right? That's such a common word. And there is no greater priority than transforming your relationship with time. If you get a handle on how time actually operates, your work flows gracefully and at high performance. If you don't, it doesn't. And he continues on. He shares a story with how he discovered this or came to the realization of it. But right there, I just want to say, it's like, everybody deals with time.
Yeah.
We all have this thing in our lives, and forming a relationship, I think that's a really important aspect of this whole chapter, is your relationship with time. So he puts it a lot of times throughout. He talks about time being out there so often. It's like something outside of us.
Outside of us.
Right? It's this thing that
seemingly
we have to deal
out of
with.
Control as well.
Oftentimes.
Yeah, it feels out of control.
He looks at it like a spectrum, which I thought was kind of cool. Like you either have not enough time, which is the hurry, go kind of thing, or the too much time, which is like boredom.
Who has too much time?
Well, I think
where
anybody who gets into boredom, these aren't typically people in our world. Yeah. I can't remember the last time I'm bored, but man, to hear him talk about the boredom thing in here and the lengths that he has gone to avoid boredom is pretty phenomenal. It's really interesting to think about, because I think that's kind of how I work in the world. It's like, I love what I do. I love different things, like being interested in things and there's so many things I want to do. But he highlighted it in a different way that made me think like, wow, like maybe I'm just that terrified of being bored.
Wow. All right. Well, let's hear it.
So anyway, he's talking about the relationship with time and the time problem that we have to solve. And the statement that he makes that we will come back to again and again, you are where time comes from.
I love that so much. I am where time come from.
That's right.
I am where time comes from.
Yes, you are the source of time.
I am the source of time. Everyone, hear me now. Oh, you are too.
Right. Therefore, you can create as much of it as you choose.
Therefore, we can create as much time as we choose. This is a new belief system for, I bet, almost everybody listening.
And let that soak in for a second. Yeah. We have this idea of time being out there. It's like this thing that we have to contend with and deal with. And the truth of the matter is that we are the source of time.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
He highlights it again with the example from Einstein, where he says, an hour with your beloved feels like a minute, and a minute on a hot stove feels like an hour.
Oh, that's really true.
But think about that and how it plays out in your life.
You know, Swamiji talked about that once at the academy. He was talking about time, and he said the same thing is like when you are doing what you love to do, time is, you're just gone. Like all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? 4 hours just went by? It was like when you're not dropped in and present and doing something that you're aligned with, it feels excruciatingly slow.
Right. And in our world, I think a key aspect of that is the distractification.
Oh, man.
Where we're in and out and in and out. And you can see how multitasking really tends to take you out of the moment, even if it's like, you know, not necessarily something you hate doing or anything like that, but you're out of the moment or you're into something else. And it's like grinding the gears. And it really tends to be a big time and energy suck.
Yeah.
And what's happening is that it doesn't allow you to expand into the time, expand into the space, I should say, and really have that kind of free flowing work, you know, that we.
So the way I see it in my brain, if we had a little, you know, diagram happening thing, is that the multitasking, everyone is like jumping over a rope back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You never land in the center. There's like a line on the road and you're going back and forth, back and forth. Yet when you're present, you're on that line and then you begin to expand out and take over and have this presence that just encompasses all that you want right then and there.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
And then you're in better communion with spirit and universe because you're present.
Yeah. I go back to my days waiting tables.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or, you know, I bartended, but regardless, you know, I'm like waiting on people. And when it's slow, it's like, it just, oh man, it takes forever. But when you're busy, you're in a rush, like you're gone. Like your shift is over before you know it. And now what's interesting about that is that you multitask in and through that. You've got a million things going through your brain, but it's all towards a very clear end. Happy customers.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's your food.
Happy customers, good tips.
Yeah.
Keep people flowing. Right.
Right.
And when you're in that like that, you can do it. But when you're not, like you're talking to the kitchen guys or, you know, you're hanging out, you're doing this, they got you doing that. And it's just like, it just grinds by.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the way that you described it. It's like occupying that space. And he gets into that. He takes a little closer look at the problem. Let's take a close look at the problem that we all face. Along with millions of other busy people, you probably have thought about time quite a bit. You've purchased one or more of the time management systems, Franklin Covey, David, or another that my neighbor David Allen created, right? I have that one. You probably thought with the highest intentions that you'd use it faithfully, and then you kind of slid off the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually you used it all. You kept a small part and quit using the rest. You may have felt guilty that you didn't use it to its full advantage. Then sometime later, you probably bought another one, right? So time and time again, it's like people are contending with this problem. The solution, Einstein Time, gives you a way to expand the amount of time you have for creative expression and intimate connections. With Einstein Time, you not only save time, but you learn how to become the source of time so that you can make as much of it as you want.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. What's the recipe for that, baby cakes?
Well, he breaks down. It's really important to understand it because there is kind of a theoretical thing that needs to be understood here to really get into the right mindset of it. He talks about the Newtonian time trap. So it's basically Newtonian physics versus quantum physics. The Newtonian paradigm guarantees that you will always have a problem with time. You will either have too little or too much. You'll either have no time at all or be sitting around with time on your hands.
That's so true. And we just hear it in our language all over the place. I don't have enough time. I have too much time. It's too slow. It's too fast. No one's like, man, my day was perfectly timed.
He says, that's so funny. Think of how many times in your life you've heard someone say, I have exactly the right amount of time to enjoy everything I'm doing.
I'm going to start saying that to people and freak them out.
I think it's great. I mean, you never hear anybody say that. At the heart of the Newtonian time crunch is a dualistic split. We are deluded into thinking that time is out there, an actual physical entity that can put pressure on us in here. That's ridiculous, of course, but try to tell that to a patient in a cardiologist's office. And he goes in to a study that said type A, the book was Type A Behavior in the Heart. Typical heart patients have a marked sense of time urgency. They're in a race with time and their hearts show the wear and tear of it.
That's really a great example of how things start out in the field and the energy and the mind and enter the physical body.
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought too. It's like, oh, there's this energetic behind it, and then an attitude as well, the mindset. Newtonian dualism pits us against time. In this paradigm, we think of time as the master and us as its slave. Oh, how many times have we heard that?
Yeah.
At the extreme, time becomes our persecutor, and we think of ourselves as its victim. Since time feels like an ever-present entity hovering in the background of our lives, we come to feel that we're victims of an entity that's always there all of the time. Such a view is dangerous to our health, disastrous for our business, and ruinous to our relationships with family and friends. That's why I urge you to adopt Einstein Time. See, the sales copy is solid.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's like, the other thing is we so often equate running out of time with death, right? It's like,
that's the ultimate out of time.
I'm going to be out of time. I'm going to be out of time. Never mind what's happening after we leave the planet, but it's like that whole thing, it does become the enemy.
Right. It becomes the thing, that we're racing against the clock, Our time problem, a space problem. To get to the new expanded version of time offered by Einstein, we also need to make a few changes in how we think about space. Right? We're running on Einstein time. Our experience of time changes because we make a fundamental change in how much space we are willing to occupy. By learning to occupy space in a new way, we actually gain the ability to generate more time. This is where he uses the example of the stove. How quickly time compresses when you're in an uncomfortable situation. You're doing a bunch of things that you don't want to be doing, which is very relevant to this book, like we talked about in the last episode about the zone of genius, or I think that was the second episode, the zone of genius, right? That's the place where you really are at your best and you are in your full zone of genius. Okay, well, you're going to be doing things that you love there, right? Because nobody's zone of genius is something that they hate.
Right.
And you occupy that space more fully. That's where your creative flow with, and that's where time starts to follow this. But if you don't know how to drop into that, it's super easy to have all the other things take over your life. And that's how you get trapped in your zone of competence or your zone of excellence. Right. So it becomes a very, very relevant conversation, especially when you look at the whole book as like the big leap, right? That's your big leap into genius.
Right.
And understanding how to use time within that. Now, he shares this really interesting story about a client, and he talks about something I think a lot of us might do. So he gets a call, the client gets a call from his daughter at like 9 a.m.
Okay.
What's up? I don't think the client said it that way, but anyway, he's talking to his daughter. What's going on? And she says, there's something really important I got to tell you, but I want to tell you in person. So she's 6 hours away at school and she says, I'm on my way. I'm driving and I'm going to come see you. Okay.
The mind starts wondering.
Yeah, that's right. And then she hangs up before he even has a chance to go any further. And she's on her way and he's back in his day. This guy's trying to write, this thing. And his day is just creeping by, right? He's watching the clock. It just is taking forever. She stops for lunch along the way. She finally gets in the door and he's like, where have you been? And he's really anxious, right? I
would be too.
I'm sure. I mean, who wouldn't be? And she finally sits down with him and just says, hey, there was in the story, he tells about it. There was a tragedy. Her mother passed away earlier and the grief really struck her. And she wants to take a semester off of school, do some traveling, and see where she lands when she picks it back up. It's just too many big changes in her life. It's like not the big thing. But what he's got going on in his head the whole time is like, maybe she's pregnant, maybe she's got some horrible disease, and he's catastrophizing the whole way, and time is just creeping by.
Stories.
And when they finally get to it and they finally actually connect, right, the stories are dissipated, and she just tells him what's going on. And it was important to her that she tell him in person because she was worried, about how he might react to that. And they both drop into that space, and they spend the next several hours having a conversation, and time goes by in an instant. And it's like, wow, what a great, it's a great story because it highlights that contrast, right? Of just
dreading and stories and assuming and then connection.
Yeah. And all of a sudden when you're in that connection, you're occupying a very different space, both energetically and just more fully and presently with yourself. And all of a sudden time is just, it's gone in an instant, right? It just passes by so easily and so beautifully. And an interesting little addendum to that is that thing that he was trying to write and taking all day and getting nothing done, as soon as he sat down to write it, it was done in an hour. Right? Powerful.
It's really powerful. Well, I think it's interesting too to ask ourselves, where do we do that in our lives? And where have we like drawn out time and suffered because we had a bunch of stories in our head? And this can go on for days, right? Have you ever noticed when you're running assumptions or stories that you're losing your ability to get things done over a series of days, or you're in and out of reality because you've just exhausted time? Whereas when you really connect and drop in and you're doing what you love, or you're with someone that you're really present with and they're present with you, time flies by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's just such a great example of just our own mind is distorting time.
Right. And that's the key, is that you're the source of time.
We are the source of time.
If time were that fixed thing out there, then none of this would matter. But the fact that that's possible.
Yeah, universe doesn't run out of time. There's not a big clock in the cosmos.
Right. He brings in another element here when he talks about personas, and it's like your persona related to time. So what is the persona that we adopt for time? There's like people who are the time cops, right? So they're just, they
have to be on
always
time,
be on
everything.
time, very rigid about it, right?
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And then there's time slackers who are just like, perpetually late, just not really honoring that, not really honoring of others. And those two can really clash for different people. But that's important because it points your way towards your relationship with time.
And what's your identity? What's your story with time? Right. That you keep living and that you might want to change.
Right. Most people have the story of scarcity around time.
Yeah.
And I think in a certain way, there is something to be said for that as far as the lifetime is concerned. Like, we don't know how long we're going to be here. And I think I don't want to just dismiss that, because I actually think that's an important piece of like, man, make the most of today. Like, really live, and that's the whole point of this book, is like, stop wasting your time doing a bunch of crap that you don't really want to be doing. Be the genius. Like, really do that. And this is how this is a tool that you use to step into it. You use time rather than time using you.
Right.
But a lot of people feel used and abused by time. A lot of people hate all over time. They talk so horribly. Like, if time were a person, that person would definitely have PTSD from all the mental abuse that you've heaped on that person, and verbal abuse. Think about it.
And time is an energy. So just as we talk about money and not hating over our money, do we really want to hate on time, or do we want to love all over time?
That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah. He even says here, you'll never have enough money to buy all the stuff you don't really need, and you'll never have enough time to do all the things you really don't want to do.
That's really good. Say that again.
You'll never have enough money to buy all the stuff you don't really need, and you'll never have enough time to do all the things you don't really want to do.
So why do what we don't want to do?
That's right. Well, I think we can do things that we don't want to do because they're necessary to move us forward. But I know exactly what you're saying. It's like, why make it sucky?
Right. And I think there's two ways to look at it. I mean, there are things that we might not love doing, we don't want to do. If we have a business and we have to let someone go, or if there's just parts of the the job that you might not love, but there's a compelling reason behind it.
Absolutely.
There's an ideal, there's a vision, there's a growth. I think it's when we're doing things that we don't want to do that have no compelling reason. Throw it out the window.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Why even bother with
Yeah.
it? So we circle back to this concept that since I'm the producer of time, I can make as much time as I need. You're the source of time. And by realizing this fact, we become the truth of it. So it's something, I don't say this often, but that's something that is really worth some deep reflection.
So worth it. Well, number one, just say all that again, because when we're all present to it, you might just feel how everything lands. It's deeper. It's more expansive.
Yeah. Since I'm the producer of time, I can make as much of it as I need. By getting the truth of this statement, we make a major adjustment in ourselves. We heal the dualistic split embedded in the Newtonian relationship with time. We are no longer in an us versus them relationship time. We are the source of time. And by realizing the fact, we become the truth of it.
It's mind-blowing.
Now, here's a very interesting twist. Let's see. I'll be blunt here, just as blunt as when I'm confronting limitations in my own mind. I love that about this guy. Quit thinking time is out there. Take ownership of time. Acknowledge that you're where it comes from, and it will stop owning you. Claim time as yours, and it will release its claim on you. The best way I've found to do this is to become nimble at asking specific question. The question allows you to seize the controls of your time and your life. So here's the question. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Where in my life am I not taking full ownership?
All through life, we ask the question, where in my life am I not taking full ownership?
Particularly when we're feeling crunched for time and we're getting out of that harmonious, like that more harmonious relationship with time, that harmonized relationship. Where in my life am I not taking full ownership? What am I trying to disown? Or another way to put that, what aspect of my life do I need to take full ownership of? Now, the reason that that's important is because if you're not taking ownership of things in your life, you're not taking ownership of the time that you're spending on those things or not spending on those things, right? So if you're not taking full ownership, I love this. It ties in great with extreme ownership, right? But if you're not taking ownership for your actions and your choices, you're not taking ownership for your use or abuse of time.
Right. If we're not taking ownership of something that we're doing, like you said, choice, even the time it takes to make those choices, the time it takes to do those things, we're not taking ownership.
Right. That's right. We don't take ownership of like, oh, I had one really important thing I needed to do today, and I decided to do all the like 20 little not so important things to do today. Or I had, some really important things I needed to do today, and I got lost on Facebook,
Yeah.
The answer is always blindingly obvious, but we can't see it until we get humble enough to ask the question. And that is a humbling question.
It really is.
And this is the thing that I want to encourage everybody with this question, because I can't tell you how powerful this question is in your life, right? It is an incredibly powerful question. And there's always going to be an answer. There's always going to be room for growth and expansion into a greater level of ownership over your life.
And not to make it wrong, what has happened, but to look forward with really excitement of how it can be changed and go deeper and have that more connected ownership.
Yeah. He explains, I'll explain with his little explanation here. Here's the principle behind the question. Stress and conflict are caused by resisting acceptance and ownership. So back to the stress thing. If there is any part of ourselves or our lives that we are not fully willing to accept, we will experience stress and friction in that area. The stress will disappear the moment we accept that part and claim ownership of it. At that moment, the disowned part of us is embraced into the wholeness of ourselves. And from that place of wholeness, miracles are born. That's why and that's the miracle of time, right? And the ownership, kind of like I said before, is like, if you're disowning that, you're disowning the choices that you're making around that, right? And so taking ownership back of that gives you ownership of your time and your choices. And it's incredibly empowering. And it's only through that kind of empowerment that you have the opportunity to drop into that space and say, no, I'm the source of time. See, it's a little elusive. It really is something you got to play with.
Yeah. So significant as well. And just by saying that, I am the source of time, something feels different.
Right.
There's a claiming of the presence in the space by saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually a really beautiful thing. And then he shares a really great example here, I think, to close out this section of it. For example, if one of your children has a drug problem, you will experience more and more stress and conflict the longer you deny ownership of the problem. If you refuse to look at the problem, your denial will produce greater stress and conflict. If you look at the problem but transfer ownership by saying, this isn't my problem, this is my child's problem, you will experience more stress and conflict. Resolution of the problem will begin the moment you or the child claims ownership. It is important to note that one person usually claims ownership first. In my experience, it is rare for both people to step into responsibility at the same time. If you claim ownership first, full resolution won't occur until your child also claims ownership. When both of you decide to take ownership, as in, this is my problem and I'm committed to resolving it, you can work genuine miracles. I've seen such miracles hundreds of times. Right? So it's kind of back to that 200% that we talked about before.
Someone has to be...
Yeah. Taking that ownership.
Right,
Both people have to take full ownership. And he's offering it, I think, as a kind of extreme example that says, hey, if you've got a problem that severe, it's solved. The only way it's solved is by taking ownership. Otherwise, you're in a race against the clock, you're in a race against time, and everybody's in conflict and stress, and that stress creates more time stress, right?
It's like when we don't take ownership, we are in denial and we are resisting any solution.
Yeah. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How to begin? Begin with time itself. Do whatever it takes to get yourself in harmony with the reality that you're the source of time. Once you're convinced, start acting as if it's true.
Oh, I'm going to do that like right now. Doing it. Sitting up straighter, breathing.
That's the breathing.
Interrupting Nick.
The breathing is perfect for this. It really works well. And that's why it works, is because it really lets you drop in and fully occupy the space. A simple way to begin also is to put yourself on a radical diet. Complete abstinence from complaining about time.
Oh. That's good. A complaining about time fast.
Yeah, you have to cut out all complaints about time.
I'm doing it. I'm in.
I think what you'll discover is just how insidious this is, because time is the thing that flows through our lives. Why? Because it flows through you, but more, it's like something that we are all dealing with.
I just saw like an energetic flash of what it looks like when we complain about time. It's like all of this yucky, like little things taking over our mind. Like it gets really congested and it just grabs us instead of this clean slate from where we can impress what we desire.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a great way to put it. Here are some of the things that we might hear either from ourselves or others. I think these are valuable just to kind of get the ideas going, but you're definitely going to want to write down your own, right? I wish I had time to stop and chat, but I'm in a hurry. Where did the time go? There simply isn't enough or aren't enough hours in the day. If only I'd gotten another hour of sleep. Love to talk, but I got to run. I have to get to the bank. I don't have time to do that right now. I don't have time to do that right now.
I don't have time.
Right. And he makes a really good example of that one in particular.
Yeah.
I don't have time. I don't have time to do that right now. It's a little lie.
Yeah.
It's a little lie.
Because the now is the now. You can choose to not do it.
That's right. He highlights that with a great example with a kid. The kid comes in, dad's working and is like, yeah, I want to play catch. And dad's like, I don't have time right now. It's a lie, right? What would be more truthful is to say, I'd like to finish this first.
Right.
And then we'll play catch.
Yeah.
That's choice.
That's more truthful because time is right here. It's just what are we inserting in the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to take ownership of what we're inserting in the time and space.
That's right. And lastly here, he talks also about the sensation of time pressure. And this is, I think, a really powerful exercise because it's more in the body. Mm-hmm. So if you're to just sit quietly with your body and, just pay attention to how you're feeling, right? Don't try to change anything, just pay attention, but then bring up an instance where you felt some pretty significant time pressure. I remember one time I was trying to get to a gig and there was all kinds of traffic and I knew I was it was, oh God, this is horrifying. But pay attention to where you feel that in your body. Mm-hmm. Like, how does that show up for you? Mm-hmm. And then also do the same thing with boredom if you can. right? That's a very foreign concept to me, but I think if I tried, I could do it. I haven't actually tried that yet. But you want to pay attention to how that feels in your body, because I call that like a feeling tone, right? So it's an energy, right? It's a certain energetic tone.
Right.
And when you know what that is, it's going to probably show up for you in a very similar way. And then you can recognize, it's a very easy way to recognize, hey, I'm starting to get into that thing around time.
Right.
And you can use it as a way to interrupt that pattern and to make a new choice. Right. So it actually becomes really powerful.
Yeah.
So I super encourage everybody to do that. It's just, it won't take very long at all. How long is it going to take you to think of
it's right there.
Time you were stressed out about, having enough time. And you just sit with yourself real quietly, let your body be still, notice how you feel, and then notice what shifts as you start to bring that instance up. And do the same thing with boredom if you can. I know that a lot of people they're just bored in their lives, because they're not doing things that they love. So he ends it with the invitation, and the invitation is really simple. It's our invitation to you as well, is don't take our word for it necessarily. This is something that you're going to need to really explore in your life, experiment with, right?
Yeah.
Try it in different ways. Don't give up after just a couple tries. There's really something here.
It's going to be a deep practice and a deep ownership.
Yeah.
And I can just tell, like, just by removing those phrases of all the times and, you don't have enough time, and by not complaining about not enough time, just taking those out will allow more presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Time is something that even scientists,
I think he went to another planet when he wrote that chapter.
Quite possible.
I think he left. I think he went, boom, I'm going to write this and come back.
Right. Time is something that, even modern science can't fully explain. Like, what is this freaky thing that we have called time? So, and how does it work in our world?
Right.
We kind of have our ideas about it, but there is definitely some things that are more to the story. So I say all of that just to say it really is a personal kind of relationship, and not with something outside, but with a part of you on the inside. Since you're the source of time.
I love this so much. Well, the illuminated thought for this episode is definitely, I am the source of time.
That's right.
Try that one on for size, everyone. So this completes the series of The Big Leap.
It absolutely does.
If you did not listen to episodes 1, 2, and 3 around this, part 1, 2, and 3, go back. I think it starts at episode 176.
177.
177, 178, 179, and this is 180.
That's right.
Share this with your friends, family, anyone who wants to bend time or wants to leap big and leap with confidence. And tune in for our next episode coming up very soon here at Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA.
Namaste.
Peace. Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.